Before our feature review, if you want good commission pixel art, head on over to deviantart.com/randomdc3. Random, one of the best at pixel art.
Jurassic Park. Just a name? Or does it mean more? I think it's safe to say that the viewing public were unprepared for what lay before them when entering theaters on June 11, 1993. Now, the question that may be on your minds at this point, why cover this again? Fair question. I think when you come back to a movie with fresh eyes once in a while, you tend to have a different perspective. What you found was engaging with the visual aesthetics when you were younger, you would now be captivated by the ethical and moral implications of resurrecting ancient species. This movie came to be when Spielberg and the late Michael Crichton were working on ER, the movie. Steven and Michael go back as far as the late 1960s, where he showed Michael around on a movie set before he went off to direct an episode of The Night Gallery, so the two had a fairly decent camaraderie. Michael had tried to release Jurassic Park in the 80s as a screenplay that would have been told from a child's perspective, but then changed it to the perspective of an adult. When he mentioned to Spielberg what he was working on a project involving dinosaurs and DNA, Spielberg became disinterested in working on ER and wanted to know more about what would eventually become Jurassic Park, of which he got Universal to obtain the movie rights as he was fascinated with Michael's idea. And so, for the 30th anniversary, welcome to Jurassic Park. Spielberg is a man that goes with his gut. He knows what he's looking for, and the original ending with the skull of the T-Rex in the visitor center crushing the Velociraptor was changed to the T-Rex saving the group from the Raptors because he knew that the Rex was the star of the movie and the audience would hate him if he didn't bring the T-Rex back for that penultimate finish. The movie is a much lighter version compared to some of the darker aspects of the book, especially when the book would go into detail about the Dilophosaurus devouring Dennis Nedry in the gas-powered Jeep, leaving only his entrails behind, or the death of the human infant in Costa Rica, courtesy of the Compsognathus pack that fed off the newborn's face with blood dripping down their jaws and leaving blood-stained footprints with 3-foot claws like birds. I think it's safe to say if the movie had been adapted with the same tone that the book had, I don't think this would have been suitable for kids to see. The movie has some simple premises. They have a tragic accident where the gatekeeper at the start of the movie is killed in trying to transfer the new occupant in the Velociraptor into the raptor pen on Isla Nublar. If the park's insurance investors got some experts to endorse the island, then the insurance companies would be satisfied and allow the park to finish on schedule. And then we come to what is considered one of the most magical introductions in movie history, the first appearance of the Brachiosaurus. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, it's still magical. When you're a kid, you watch this for the visuals, but then as an adult, you appreciate the moral debates more. This is perfectly summed up with a dinner scene with Malcolm's comparison to genetic power to slapping it on a lunchbox.
It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,
Random has said on occasion, the original Jurassic Park worked because the dinosaurs had to be given context and the proper setup to get the audience excited for their reveal. I have long cited the lunch scene where Hammond, Malcolm, Ellie, and Grant discuss the efficacy of creating dinosaurs and the disastrous consequences it could bring upon the world. The scene with the T-Rex is the embodiment of that entire conversation. You give things context and setup, and the payoff is all the more sweeter. Whereas Jurassic World and the sequels just throw as many dinosaurs on screen and expects the audience to give it because, wow, dinosaurs. The way the dinosaurs are portrayed is a much more credible and better lasting impression compared to the sequels that would follow. They are not depicted as movie monsters like your King Kongs, Godzillas, or even Rodan. Here, they are represented at a very naturalistic level akin to that of animals in the wild today, from lions to tigers, elephants, rhinos, and various birds like emus and ostriches. Which is apropos when you consider the emphasis was to look at dinosaurs being more like birds as opposed to reptiles, as they've been viewed for several decades before the release of Dr. Robert Backer's book, Dinosaur Heresies, in which he viewed the animals as warm-blooded creatures and bird-like and less reptilian. So when you see the T-Rex stalking the Ford Explorer, the same one that's implied to be in Fallen Kingdom when Owen Grady is looking for Blue the Velociraptor, this is how wild predators would investigate what was going on when Lex was shining the torchlight. Speaking of the T-Rex, its first appearance is done to perfection. From the build-up of the seismic vibrations of its footsteps is felt in the kid's Ford Explorer, to seeing the concentric circles in a glass of water, to the disappearance of the goat that was used to try to tempt the Rex much earlier, seeing its lifeless and severed limb land on the glass roof, to seeing the towering, intimidating figure of the Queen of the Dinosaurs raise her head above the trees, coming into full view as the menacing eyes lay upon the vehicle's occupants, amidst the already ominous thunder, lightning, and torrential rain. And then came the scene that has terrified audiences of many generations. There's a term I like to use on occasion called the rollerball effect, in that the momentum keeps turning even when the action slows down, allowing time for the audience to breathe. And it's the same with this movie. Even when there aren't dinosaur scenes, you still see the plot moving fluidly in trying to get the kids through the park and finding the means of getting off the island. In summary, this movie is classic Spielberg. He was always the best man for the job with this movie in having the right tone and vision for the story and having a suspense action thriller where it's humanity against nature. In my mind, and many others for that matter, Sam Neill was ideally cast as a paleontologist based on Dr. Jack Horner, who is also the chief paleontological consultant of the movie. Grant comes across as a lovable grouch. He hates two things in life: computers and children. Being a technophobe for the way just by touching the makeshift TV monitor when examining the screen of a fossil, and the way he makes the kid's life flash before his eyes for the way he puts the fear of a velociraptor into him by describing to the point of graphic detail what a raptor would do to him along with the rest of its pack. I like to think of the character as someone who's very 50-50 with what he's witnessing at the park, in the context of, yes, he's marveled by this mind-blowing event and it raises more questions even after he's had several questions answered, but he also has concerns, which is highlighted here.
Dinosaurs and man, two species separated by 65 million years of evolution, have just been suddenly thrown back into the mix together. How can we possibly have the slightest idea of what to expect?
In the concept art, it was depicted as Harrison Ford as Alan Grant, but he turned it down. Spielberg reminded him of this after Ford got annoyed that he only cast him in indie roles. The late William Hurt turned down the role without even reading the script. Interesting. Needless to say, the right actor played the correct role. I think what I like about Laura as Dr. Settler is that she's just a great personality. She's the yin to Alan's yang. Whereas Grant is the sober grump who is uncomfortable around children and technology, Ellie seems to embrace both. Laura really makes Ellie approachable, warm, and friendly around others, including Lex and Tim. She's a doctor in paleobotany that's intelligent, proactive, resourceful, inquisitive, and not afraid to put herself in harm's way for the sake of others when she goes to reboot the system manually in the maintenance shed. Also, I'm just going to say this for posterity, it doesn't matter who you are. You have to have a real strong constitution just at the mere thought of going forearm deep into dinosaur droppings. When you're 12, you think of him as the ultimate buzzkill, but when you get to 32 and upwards, you end up low-key agreeing with him. Just like in the novel, he is the moral conscience of the franchise, and it's something that would be further progressed in not only The Lost World 4 years later, and to when he would make his return in Jurassic World 2, Fallen Kingdom. Jeff portrays Dr. Malcolm as a man with a lot of sober common sense and with a lot of sarcastic charm and charisma.
Yeah, but John, if the Pirates of the Caribbean breaks down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
It's worth noting that Jim Carrey also auditioned for the role of Dr. Malcolm 2 years before the movie came out, and the casting team were actually impressed with his audition. But when you look at both actors knowing their capabilities, Jeff was always the correct choice. Not to take anything away from Jim's talents, he can do decent dramatic acting from his performances in The Truman Show, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Kidding. In movies, you always get that one actor that just defines a role perfectly. Tom Cruise is the best Maverick, and Michael Keaton is the best Batman. Michael J. Fox is the definitive Marty McFly, William Daniels is the best voice for Kit, and the late Sir Richard Attenborough was perfectly cast as Dr. John Hammond. Spielberg had originally wanted to cast him as Toodles for Hook, but when he was unable to get him for that movie, he said to him, "I'll get you for my next one." Spielberg enjoyed working with the man and wanted to get him in at least one more Jurassic Park movie, as he found him and his character to be a joy around. Richard has this wonderful presence around him as the billionaire that took that step forward to bringing dinosaurs back from extinction and to have them in an amusement park. Interesting fact, when the storm hit the Isle of Kauai while they were filming the exterior shots, Richard had slept through the entire storm, and when questioned about it, he replied, "Oh my dear boy, I survived the blitz." And to quote Spielberg, this was nothing for him. Mr. Knight, no relation, plays the greedy saboteur type to a fine art. He acts like a wolf in sheep's clothing in being the senior computer engineer at the park, and like how the geneticists engineer the dinosaurs, he engineers the plan with the intent to make off with the secrets to deliver to Dodson at Biosyn, the unnamed rival genetics company to InGen, and it's the same engineered plan that causes the park to fall apart. Literally and figuratively, and I'm going to give one small credit here.
The raptor fences aren't out, are they?
No, they're still on.
Okay, let's be real just for a moment. Even with nothing but money on his mind, even he isn't that stupid to turn those fences off. Who would have thought that this role would be a sign of great things to come? From Pulp Fiction to the underrated Shaft 2000, Coach Carter, and his long-serving presence as General Nick Fury in the MCU. Samuel plays a small role in Ray Arnold as one of the computer technicians that helps in dealing with the smooth running of the park. It's a small role, but it's a good performance. The late Bob Peck plays a small but great role in being the park's game warden that has been up close and personal, maybe too personal when it comes to the velociraptors. Peck has this cut-to-the-chase mentality when laying out how dangerous the raptors are and how this has been much of a learning experience for him despite being an experienced hunter from Kenya. Originally, it was going to be Lex that was going to be the more outdoor type, but then the writing was changed to where Lex would be the computer expert, or at least an expert in training. Ariana is not really given a lot to do outside of being the computer expert in training, screaming and running from the velociraptors in the kitchen. But she does make Lex the protective elder sibling when she knows that the raptors are playing cat and mouse with them, or playing dino and humans, whichever your preference. Joseph is basically me and several other kids who went to watch this movie, whether it was when it first came out in theaters or to the times it's been released on DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. When you see Joseph being marveled at the sick Triceratops or looking up in awe and fear at the first appearance of Rexy, the child audience is looking at the movie through his eyes. ILM and Stan Winston Studios, two of the biggest and most respected effects companies in the movie industry today. When you have a resume ranging from Terminator 1 and 2, of which the latter took home 2 Oscars, one for Best Makeup and the second for Best Visual Effects, he also worked on Batman Returns and Edward Scissorhands, then you're definitely dealing with someone who's extremely dedicated and articulate with his work. When you look at the way that the animals moved from the sick Triceratops as it lay docile on the floor showing an animal in labored breathing. This was the first scene shot, and it's the same with the T-Rex. If you are in the presence of this animatronic, then you're in awe of this dinosaur, and because of the very detailed latex foam skin it has on its robotic skeleton, you buy into the idea that this is a real animal and not a sophisticated creation from Stan Winston Studios. It's also worth mentioning that he also got an Oscar for Jurassic Park along with Michael Lantieri, Phil Tippett, and Dennis Murin. Deservedly so. The other element that would set this dinosaur movie apart from those that had preceded it and other movies that were using visual effects at the time is raising the photorealism of visual effects. Spielberg was fully intent on using Phil Tippett's Go Motion animation that had a smooth motion blur that was a variation of stop motion, the kind of animation you'd see from the likes of Wallace and Gromit. However, even though others were impressed with the demos of the Go Motion dinosaurs, Spielberg thought there was something off about it. Enter Dennis Murin of ILM. He proposed the idea of using a CG dinosaur with just a herd of Gallimimus skeletons running through a photograph, and it just had the fluid motion that Spielberg was looking for. And then we see the first fleshed out dinosaur reel, and it was just a T-Rex wandering through a field in the harshest sunlight, and that was when he knew that was what they needed to go with. Tippett took one look at that situation and said, "I think I'm extinct," of which Spielberg gave that line to Malcolm.
We're out of a job. Don't you mean extinct?
I'm sure he saw the funny side of it, because after all, he stayed on production and acted as a consultant for what was essentially one of the earliest forms of motion capture, as they built a device known as the DID, Dinosaur Input Device, that would operate using similar principles of Go Motion, where instead of a camera photographing a model, the computer would capture the specific movements needed when animating the CG dinosaurs when they were running, as this would be beyond the animatronic dinosaurs' capabilities. Now, I've been batting for this movie's visual effects for as long as I can remember, but there are some inconsistencies. If you look at when the Rex is chasing the Jeep, you will see that the CG model doesn't quite match the animatronic model to where Rexy still has all her teeth. Whereas when she attacked the Explorer, she loses a tooth that came off, and this is something that is kept in continuity throughout the series, as when we see her again in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, she is missing that specific tooth from the first movie. Also, the kid's reaction when the glass roof broke, that was unscripted, as the roof was not supposed to break. Because the CG of this quality was still experimental when this was worked on in the early 90s, ILM were still working out how far they could push the limits given the breakthroughs that they had had with Terminator 2 prior to this movie. The breakout of the T-Rex is still a terrifying visual spectacle to this day. Seeing this 40-foot long, 20-foot high and 9-ton animal free itself from its enclosure and making its presence known was a force of nature. And because of the fact this was taking place at night would allow ILM to have it blend into the background, as it has been shown over the years that a lot of visual effects studios tend to use night and storm effects to hide bad CG. In Jurassic Park's case, although the CG was experimental then, the storm setting definitely benefited the visual effects. The last visual effect was Rexy dispensing with the last Velociraptor, and seeing the banner of "When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth" is such an iconic shot, with Rexy letting the island and the audience know this is her house. 3 decades on, the effects still look great. John Williams, the name alone says legendary perfection. It doesn't matter if you've seen movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s, or even the last 20 years, at some point you've come across this man's example of why he is one of the measuring sticks as a composer. Whether it's the Empire March, also known as Darth Vader's theme, the intimidating slow bass line of Jaws, the grandeur and gravitas of the Superman theme, or to even the majestic splendor that is the theme of E.T. John is able to have you feeling a mix of emotions based on the scene that you're watching. From Superman's first appearance in Metropolis after exiting the revolving door, to the scene in Home Alone 2, where Kevin McAllister observes a child in a hospital window. And Jurassic Park is arguably one of his greatest scores to date. Just like with the examples before, he can create a great piece to enhance the mood of any scene. Such as Rexy chasing the Jeep, a touching moment with a sick Triceratops, Now here's a great moment where he can go from suspenseful to a hero saving the day. brilliantly using the theme as a triumphant piece. Speaking of the theme, I think one of the best pieces that really captures the magic of the movie is when Grant sees that they do move in herds. That one moment of the score perfectly captures the magic, majesty, and beautiful innocence of the animals in that scene. His Jurassic Park theme would be used throughout both trilogies, and it's a lasting testament to the man's talent. People that are either not huge fans of the movie franchise or haven't even seen the movies, they hear the theme, they instantly know it's Jurassic Park. John Williams is one of the best. That's it. Jurassic Park grossed a profit of $1 billion against a budget of $63 million. After 30 years of inflation, the gross profit for the movie now would be $2.1 billion in 2023. It became the highest grossing movie at that time, surpassing E.T. It took $50.1 million on its opening weekend, breaking Batman Returns' weekend opening record of $45.7 million. It would hold this record for 2 years before 1995's Batman Forever surpassed it with $52.8 million. Janet Maslin of the New York Times called it a true movie milestone, presenting awe and fear-inspiring sights never before seen on the screen. On paper, this story is tailor-made for Mr. Spielberg's talents, but it becomes less crisp on screen than it was on the page, with much of the enjoyable jargon either mumbled confusingly or otherwise thrown away. Rolling Stone's Peter Travers described the film as colossal entertainment, the eye-popping, mind-bending kick-out-the-jams thrill ride of the summer, and probably the year. Compared with the dinos, the characters are dry bones indeed. Crichton and co-screenwriter David Koepp have flattened them into non-entities on the trip from page to screen. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 stars out of 4. This movie delivers all too well on its promise to show us dinosaurs. We see them early and often, and they are indeed a triumph of special effects artistry. But the movie is lacking other qualities that it needs even more, such as a sense of awe and wonderment and strong human story values. The movie won 3 Academy Awards for Best Visual Effects, Best Sound, and Best Sound Effects Editing. The first of 5 sequels followed in 1997 with The Lost World Jurassic Park, Jurassic Park 3 in 2001 before the franchise went into hiatus for 14 years before returning with the beginning of the Jurassic World trilogy with 2015's Jurassic World, with 2018's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom that tied in with the 25th anniversary of the original movie. Jurassic World Dominion would have been released in 2021, but due to the World event, the production halted for 3 months before they could resume production, of which they were the first production to resume before the movie was completed and ready for audiences for June 2022, which concluded the Jurassic Saga. Oh, but there will always be more. Universal Pictures announced that there will be more sequels to come, but the franchise would go into hiatus for 5 to 10 years. Since 1993, the movie has been treasured on VHS, Laserdisc, DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. I'm MJ Knight, and welcome back to Jurassic Park.
Four years after the accident at Jurassic Park, we move to 1997. Where InGen looks to move the dinosaurs off a new island, finally realizing John Heyman's dream on the mainland. Real Features continues its retrospective of the franchise with the 26th anniversary of 1997's The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Only on Real Features.